Hi, I'm Tom Burgess, and thank you for listening to Profit for Purpose from the Real Agenda network of podcasts for political change. Now, today's special show, we will be talking to Julian Richer, founder of the home entertainment retailer Richer Sounds, and an active political campaigner. Now, you may remember we talked to Julian back in October 2019, and as he has so much going on, we thought it's time to talk to him again to get an update on his three main campaigns. That's the Good Business Charter, 0 Hours Justice and Tax Watch. And you may have seen a fair bit of coverage in the mainstream media about these recently, or certainly about the Good Business Charter. Changing capitalism to be more socially responsible is a key objective of those of us who want to see business serve all stakeholders, not just the shareholders. For we all create the wealth from the work we do, but the current system means it's only accumulated by a few. Luckily, Julian is on the case. He recently transferred the ownership of the company he founded 40 years ago to an employee-owned trust, and now focuses his time on bringing change. So it's really worth listening to Julian, as he is an example to others and hopefully will influence those in positions of wealth and power to take action. And while you're here, let me just mention a new show that's coming up from the Real Agenda Network. It's called Something's Got to Change, with the subtitle of The New Politics Show. Now, that's not a new show about politics. Well, it is, but it's a show about new politics, a politics based on compassion and inclusivity. We're really pleased to announce that this will be presented by ex-BBC Newsnight presenter Gavin Esler, and also Jennifer Nadel, ex-BBC and then ITN's Home Affairs editor. This promises to be a great show and bring a new consensus-seeking, non-competitive approach to political interviewing. And we're also glad that, in fact, that Julian is fully supporting the show and is up for making a regular contribution. So back to today, I started by asking Julian why he set up the campaign, which is called 0 Hours Justice.
Okay, so I really feel for people that have 0-hour contracts imposed upon them. I'm not talking about people who enter into them of their own free will. Maybe they've got another income stream, or wealthy parents, or they're relaxed whether they do a few hours a week, maybe a retired person. I'm talking about people who really need these jobs and are unable to plan their lives because of the insecurity of the work. I'll give three examples, if I may. People ask me, well, what's wrong with them? Well, say you're great swathes of the country where there's no social housing available. Where are these people supposed to live? Because even decent landlords in the private sector are understandably reluctant to accept someone on a 0-hour contract because they can't demonstrate regular income. So that's one example. And we've heard of care workers literally living and sleeping in their cars. I mean, this is a stain on our nation. The second example I give is of sexual exploitation. Women desperate for more hours go to their abusive bosses who say, well, what are you going to do for me, love, if you want more hours? And literally, people are at the end of a piece of string, on a leash, as I describe it, on a daily basis in those circumstances. Third example I give is working mums trying to balance their lives. They arrange childcare so they can go to work. They go to work and the boss says, oh, it's a bit quiet today, love, you can go home early. Obviously not going to get paid. So they've got to pay for their childcare and they've got no income that day. So not only do these 0-hour contracts cause poverty, but they cause misery as well. The stress this causes on a daily basis is quite unacceptable in my opinion. And as far as I can work out, we're one of only 6 countries out of 28 in the EU. We're not in the EU anymore. We're at the bottom of the pile and we should be embarrassed. And an example I give is of the dockers 100 years ago. They would stand on the quayside waiting for work, and if a boss came along in his van and picked them up, they'd work, and if they didn't, they and their families would go hungry. We haven't moved on from those days. This is a modern day version of that, and it's something I'm trying to stop.
So what do you hope to achieve with the campaign?
Well, we've called it 0-hour justice, and for credibility, which I think is very important, first of all, we've had great support from the TUC, and even though we have different views on some things, I'm sure, I'm very keen for it not to be party political, the campaign. The president of the Bakers Union is our president, Ian Hodson, a great guy. Very important that he's with us because he's very well respected, and we've got some terrific people on the team. The guy that wrote the book Hired, who worked undercover in various companies and first brought to my attention, how dreadful zero-hour contracts are. A guy called James Bloodworth, he's on the team. Got a terrific lawyer who really cares about human rights, helping on the legal side, overseeing our legal work. He's called Damien Morrison, and I have one of my colleagues from work called James Johnson Flint, also running things day to day. We've got a team behind them as well. So what are we trying to achieve? Sorry, long answer to your question. So 4 components to that, I guess. One is PR. We've had some great press. Now, I gave a talk at Congress House, the TUC headquarters, and I invited the Telegraph down, and the wonderful journalist from Telegraph, Lizzie Burden, came along. She said she's so pleased she invited me. She'd never been down there before, and she had a really positive piece, about how bad these things are that I was speaking. I invited the Guardian down, and we had a terrific article in the Guardian. Again, very important for me to reach business managers and owners and senior employees in the business world. I want to make this a positive thing. The benefits of treating staff well are so important for businesses rather than threatening confrontation. And someone posted the Guardian story on Facebook. It had 8,000 likes. I'm not on Facebook, but apparently that's a lot. And 500 very supportive comments. So I'm trying to get the press involved. Even the Mail on Sunday, this last Sunday before we recorded this, we had a very positive story. And I think that's terrific. So PR is a positive way of changing things. We're going to do some national press adverts as well, just keeping the story going. Also, we're going to have clinics around the country advising people of their rights. So in other words, more women are given zero-hour contracts. If it's sort of sexist, prejudicial behaviour, then there might be a legal case there. And likewise, if more people of colour in a firm have been given zero-hour contracts, we could say that's racist, and there might well be an opportunity there to take businesses to court through selective litigation. And I guess the fourth one is naming and shaming, but in a sort of sophisticated way. I'm not out to cause trouble, and we want to go for low-hanging fruit here. I'd rather go round government. I think to get this in government and get the law changed would be difficult where we are now politically. I mean, I'd love to meet Boris and try and persuade him myself, so I'm happy to speak to anyone that listens to me. What I'd like to do is go for taxpayer-funded institutions. So I'm talking about councils, schools, colleges, hospitals, art galleries, Westminster, even, dare I say, the royal household. And if people come to us on our website and we ask for people to tell us, give us information, we'll then clarify with the institution, is it true that they're using zero-hour contracts, possibly through agencies. Some people don't even know that the agencies they use are using zero-hour contracts on their employees. So we'll try and bring it to our attention in a civilised way, have a discussion with them, give an opportunity to change their ways by persuading them. And ultimately, of course, if they refuse, then we might have to resort to naming and shaming. And I think in the circumstances, because it's such an important area, I'm not talking about smashing shop fronts. A lot of this is about identification. If consumers knew what was going on, I think they'd perhaps vote with their feet. So the naming and shaming is a useful tool to try and improve behaviour. And I'll just finish off by saying here, if, for instance, we changed a council, persuade the council to change its policy, or a college, we could then go around to other colleges or other and try and get them to do the same thing.
So how many people are affected by zero-hour contracts?
Well, it's quite difficult to know. So we think about 1 million people, of which the vast majority, certainly where they're imposed on them, don't like them. As I say, I imagine a small group, possibly 10%, might be happy to put up with them. Only from what I understand from speaking to people, but I imagine at least 90% hate them, and probably 100% hate them who have them imposed on them without question, And sorry, can I also add that one mustn't mix up gig economy workers. I read a survey recently mixing gig economy with zero-hour contracts. Now, there are about 5 million people on gig economy workers. Now, there are sort of relation, but they're not the same. So I feel for gig economy workers. I see the pressure they're under. If you've seen Ken Loach's film, Sorry We Missed You, it's hugely depressing. But it is a different problem. They have one advantage, big advantage over zero-hour contract workers, and that is generally you can log on and off as you want to. So if you're an Uber driver, you can log on or off when you want to work, and you own your car. You have a certain element of freedom there, but you don't have that as a zero-hour worker. So once you're an employee on this contract, you are locked in. And when I say locked in, I mean literally locked in, because if you want to leave, say the boss doesn't like the cut of your jib, or you won't give them the sexual favours they demand, hopefully that is a minority but still abhorrent, then you can't leave, because if you leave, you cannot apply for job seekers allowance. So you will suffer through benefits deprivation if you leave these awful jobs. So this is where people have said well, you can, there's lots of jobs in the economy, we've got nearly full employment, people can move from one job to the other. It is not as easy as that. These people at the lower end, they're the most vulnerable. And can you imagine the lowest paid are always the most vulnerable in any organisation. But I haven't got a scientific formula, but it's 10 times worse if on a daily basis you've got to fight for work.
So you've got a number of things you're setting out to change in the business world, this being one of them, but you've also now got your Good Business Charter, which covers a whole range of things. Just tell us a bit more about that. I understand you've just launched it. How's it going?
Okay, well, yes, completely different project. I don't want you to confuse your listeners, and I don't want to think...
Well, we've got a lot to talk about in a short period of time, and you're so busy.
No, bless you. It's very sweet, and it's good of you to have me on your show. But and I love talking about what I'm doing, of course. But just to make it clear to your listeners, it's a different thing. But it's related in terms of my good business agenda, if you like, or campaign. So first I set up Tax Watch, which we've spoken about before, Zero Hour Justice. So this other project, which has been in gestation period for a couple of years, is an accreditation scheme. So what I mean by that is that members will sign up and belong. And my dream would be that if we manage to achieve critical mass, that the public will be aware of the Good Business Charter and look out for businesses exhibiting their membership in different ways. So why do we need a business charter? Let's rewind. Christian Aid did a survey in 2014, and they said that 85% of the public thought that tax avoidance was morally wrong. I'm sure they were thinking a lot of other things were wrong, not paying the living wage, not paying suppliers on time. So I thought the problem actually was one of identification. What do we as consumers need? We need a way of pointing out who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. So my dream would be if we saw two cafes next to each other, one would have a GBC sticker, one wouldn't, and we would go to the one with the GBC sticker. I looked around at what was out there. There are other schemes out there. We obviously think ours is best. I think the problem with some of the schemes were, in fact, most of the schemes I've come across don't require a 100% pass mark. What that means is that you actually never know, even if they've got the sticker for their accreditation, whether it's the living wage they're not paying or are they not paying their tax. And that causes confusion. So we have 10 components only. I think there's a good work charter in London, which the Mayor of London has set up very admirably, and we support that and we're members. They have over 170 criteria just for work. Now, even we try and be great employers, but we wouldn't tick all the boxes. So we thought, let's have 10 components, but you're in or you're out. So everyone with a GBC accreditation has got to comply, and that does include the real living wage. It does include declaration on fair tax. It does include prompt payment, etc., etc. And if anyone's interested, please go to goodbusinesscharter.com to see what the components are with an explanation.
Because there were some comments made after the launch, weren't there, that some of the people that had signed up, people seemed dubious that they actually qualified for some of those points.
So Capitalism was a great story. When I did my employee ownership trust last year, I was deluged with wonderful correspondence, and the guy that runs Capita is called Jonathan Lewis, and he's only been there a short while. And Capita had problems, and he was determined to turn the organisation around. He said, love what you've done. He said he's very sympathetic. He's put 2 employees on the board. Can we meet for a cup of tea? And we did. He said, well, what are you working on? And this was like a year ago. I said, well, I'm working on this, the Good Business Charter. He said, I want to be your first signatory. I thought, yeah, and I'm the Duke of Edinburgh. Anyway, he kept it on at me in a nice way, like when we communicate how you get on with it, don't forget I want to be the first. So bless him. We kept our word and let him be the first, and I'm delighted because they're a big company. I think they've got 85,000 employees. He's just signed up the real living wage. So yes, they have had problems yet, but he wasn't there when the problems occurred. So we had a couple of comments saying, Capita, bloody hell, they're not very discerning, this Good Business Charter lot. But rest assured, he was determined to join. What we're looking for is honourable intent. He's a good guy. You've got to give people a chance. And they have signed up to the 10 components. So I don't know what criticism you've seen, but all I can say is that we've had a fantastic response. We had all the papers at the weekend. We've got people in a queue waiting to sign up, not only little companies, but huge companies. And I'm absolutely delighted. And charities. We've had the Trussell Trust sign up, the biggest food bank organisation. Good on them. And we've got other people.
But it's self-certified, is it? You say, I am doing these things.
Okay, so it's not quite as easy as that. You have to. So it's all the questions are automated, and then of course we have real people looking at them. And if it was a dodgy organisation, so monitoring and enforcement is a really important part of it. If businesses are caught with their trousers down, so to speak, they're going to make us look terrible. So rest assured, we are onto it. So we're asking Obviously, the easy one is whistleblowers. If you work for Capita, one of the 85,000 people, and you weren't receiving a real living wage, you've now got someone you can tell about it, and we'll be on it like a shot, and you can report it anonymously to us, and we can investigate. We've met all the main trade associations who are overwhelmingly positive, and we said, look, we want to know the rogues in your industry to watch out for. It's in all of our interest not to let them join or keep a close eye on them. We had a company approach us this week. I'm not going to name names. I wasn't convinced for the sort of company we wanted involved, and we're investigating that further. So we're not just letting anyone come in, and they sign over the right. We have a right to investigate and ask for anything once they join. We want to see their books if we have any questions at all. It's not a matter of self-certifying in a loose way, but yes, they do answer questions and then we investigate. So, other reasons we need a good business charter. One is identification. Secondly, people who run businesses, a lot of well-meaning business people out there. Some are a little deluded. They think they're wonderful. So I met businesses who think they're great, but they don't pay the real living wage. I mean, I'm not going to name names because I hope we'll win them over. And anyway, I don't want to embarrass them because they mean well. Other businesses pay the real living wage, but they think it's okay to siphon tax offshore. So what you'll find is there are a lot of good business people that will tick 6, 7 or 8 of the components. I want them to tick all 10. We're hoping to move them all along to that. So I think that's really important. And I also think that people who are good deserve recognition. So it's a really good point that if you tick the 10 already, get signed up and get the badge. You deserve credit for what you're doing. And then the other one is that the public are sick of bad business at the moment. We keep reading bad stories. I did a trade association last week, and they said, I didn't know what the word meant. It's a German word, Zeitgeist. I heard people say it. I looked it up afterwards, and it means of the moment, apparently. And they said, everyone's talking about this. Every think tank, serious newspaper, journal is talking about responsible capitalism, and this is doing it. This is what we need. So I think some really good reasons why we need a good business charter. Very important to have adequate monitoring enforcement, which we're doing. I think the advantage of ours over other schemes, less than an hour to sign up if you've got your answers ready. Also, 100% success rate. In other words, you're in or you're out. You have to sign up for all 10 components, as I mentioned. But thirdly, also, it's very inexpensive. So I'm funding it, free to join, free the first year membership, and then thereafter, the maximum fee is going to be £1,000 in current pricing. That would be for the biggest company in the land. Now, there's a famous organisation out there called B Corporation that people mentioned to me. From my little company, they wanted $25,000 a year. My ops director tried on and off to join. It took him 6 months. He was pulling his hair out. In the end, when we saw what the bill was going to be, we thought, actually, we're not going to bother. The less than an hour to join is important as well. And we think the all or nothing is important. And the response has been amazing. So all I can say is watch this space and let's try and get critical mass.
So not only have you got the Good Business Charter, you've got your campaign for 0 Hours Justice, you also wrote a book, The Ethical Capitalist. What's the mainstream of what you say in that book?
Okay, so capitalism, let me talk about that for a moment. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? So on the one hand, we all enjoy goods and services that capitalists provide, okay? Also, a good capitalist will provide good quality jobs, decent jobs. A good capitalist will pay their tax. A good capitalist won't rip off their customers. And on the other side of it is that capitalism is based on greed fundamentally. Also, I think the bigger the company gets, particularly public companies, geographically and size, the tendency to corrupt unfortunately becomes greater. And the more wealth that businesses or individuals amass, again, the more power they have, both in influencing government, affording the best tax advisors to help them get out of their responsibilities. So you've got sort of plus and minus there. So where I'm coming from is that it's time to change. And whereas we used to lionize tax avoiders, and some even got knighthoods for sort of arguably dubious achievements, and think they were clever siphoning off money and living offshore. I think we need to get more like, and we are moving into more of a Denmark model where actually tax avoiders are vilified and have very tough sentences, and it's just not socially acceptable. So hopefully that is moving, the dial is moving across. But I think for capitalists to be accepted in society, they have an obligation to society. And I've often said, as a retailer, I rely on the roads for my lorries, I rely on the police to protect my property, I rely on the schools to teach my wonderful colleagues to read and write, and the hospitals to fix them when they get sick. So, of course, I have a debt to society, and it's about time that, and I'm not the only one, by the way, there are a lot of good capitalists out there. I think part of the problem is it's the bad ones that get the publicity, and the good ones are working blooming hard to make an honest buck and just get on with their lives. But I think it's important that as a whole we recognise our debt to society. That is important. So the first part of the book is that, but also that not only, if you do that, you'll sleep better at night, but also your business will flourish. My business, I haven't read this in a book or been to Harvard. I've actually been working at my first shop at 19, but I've learned over 40 years that the most important thing is that it's all about the people. I've done lots of things in 40 years, but that's the overriding thing. A huge different output from people depending on how you treat them, and of course other stakeholders as well. If I pay my bills on time, I get wonderful juicy deals from suppliers. So my business has really benefited. Absolutely benefited from my theory, if you like. And that's the first part of the book. And the second part of the book is what the state has to do, what society has to do to keep these people in check. Because they have so much power and resource, the state has to be much firmer with them. And I'm talking about, particularly on tax, a huge amount of tax, we've spoken about this before, is leaking out the bucket, and we need to do much more to retrieve that money. But also rules. I'm not into football particularly. I don't want to upset your other listeners who are, but I understand that, they have pretty strict rules in football, and if you didn't have rules, it'd be anarchy. And I can relate to driving. We have a lot of rules on the highway, and if we didn't have rules, there'd also be chaos there. So in business more than ever, where a lot of money is involved, we need really strict rules. People say, oh, we don't want rules, it hinders our progress. I think that's rubbish. I think we need strong rules to keep business in line for the people that don't get it.
So it's really about shifting from the sort of shareholder primacy to all the stakeholders so that capitalism works for all.
Well, I think it's much easier if you own your business, or in our case, we're now an employee ownership trust. I think it's harder for publicly owned companies because, unfortunately, an awful lot of shareholders just care about the size of the dividend check landing on their doormat twice a year. Now, there's a growing band of ethical investors who do care, and I hope that will continue to grow. But that is hard, and it takes a brave chief executive to say, no, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. It'll take a bit longer to get the payoff, but for the sake of the organisation, I want to do this. So there is an inherent problem with that, and all I can say is, let's try and move the dial. Let me try and influence people like my friend at Capita, who has shareholders, and he didn't even discuss it as far as I'm aware. He just absolutely wanted to do this because he felt it's the right thing to do, and full respect to him.
So just before we finish, tell us a bit about your other project, this Tax Watch.
So Tax Watch came about after reading The Great Tax Robbery. It's a terrific book by Richard Brooks. I invited him to tea. At the end of the book, he said that this country needs an organisation, let's call it Tax Watch, to investigate and expose aggressive tax avoidance. So I invited him for tea. He said, what do you want? Didn't know what I wanted, and actually we became friends. He's a super guy, and he was completely. I wanted to fund Tax Watch. That was the reason for the invitation. He's put the most amazing team together, run by this incredible guy called George Turner. He's got an editorial board. I'm not allowed anywhere near the editorial board, quite rightly, because I want them to have their complete independence. I read the stories when you do in the papers, but they've had worldwide stories already. They've got a tax manifesto, which again is not party political. They've come up with a definition of tax avoidance, because I keep meeting people, at dinner parties and say, oh, well, anything that's within the law is acceptable, and that's rubbish, because people twist the law for their own good. So they might be technically legal, but of course not for the purpose intended. So these Tax Watch guys are doing a great job, and if anyone's interested, go to the Tax Watch website.
And so what next for your campaigns?
I want to see them successful, and these two recent ones, Zero Hour Justice particularly. Tax Watch has been going for 18 months, but Zero Hour Justice, a good business child I want to put time into. The great majority of my time now is in these non-business activities because I love doing them. But the next one, longer term, would possibly be a fairness foundation. So, I'm interested in social housing. I've written a paper on that. I'm interested in penal reform, the criminal justice system. So the commonality between the interests I have, I sort of thought about it, and I realised it was fairness. It was about injustice. So what I'd like to do is get the best writers of the day together on a website, and I've registered the Fairness Foundation. And I'd really like to get a groundswell, again, non-party political, of talking about what's right for our society, and hopefully try and influence the movers and shakers to move in that direction.
So clearly, something's got to change. So what would be your top tips for business leaders and for what we might call the general public?
Well, all self-serving, I'm afraid. So one, read my book, The Ethical Capitalist. If you're interested in motivating your employers, I wrote a book 25 years ago. It's a bit of a cult book now called The Richer Way, and that's been very well received. It sounds terrible, doesn't it? I'm just promoting my books here. I think do stuff. People say, well, what can I do as a citizen? Well, I've proved, I've not had a further education. I'm just a shopkeeper selling stereos, and I've just irritating determination to try and sort of do stuff. Again, I don't want this to sound like, I'm not a saint. I've got many, my first page of the book says, I'm deeply flawed, and if you knew any of my mates, they'd happily confirm that. So you don't have to be perfect to do this stuff, but I'm very lucky that I'm, got a bit of time on my hands, and I've got a few bob, and I've learned a few things in my few years. So yeah, have a go at changing the way you run your business. I read a great book in 1982 called In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters and Rob Waterman, and they found that the commonality between all the successful companies they analysed in America was great customer service and great treatment of employees. And one thing's for sure, you won't get your people to give great service if you don't treat them well. And this was mind-blowing for me when I read it. A lot of your listeners won't have been born then, but it's still available, the book. And so I took a microscope and a knife to my business, and I never looked back. So again, I don't want to take the credit for this. This has been going on for a long, long time. But I certainly recommend they did that.
Well, it's also about changing people's behaviours, isn't it? Because one of the things you said here is that with a good business charter, there's a badge on your business or shop, and so therefore people are going to go to businesses that are good businesses and consider the community as a whole rather than just the shareholders.
Absolutely. So I think the public can do their part. They can vote with their feet for sure. They can be vociferous with protests, with campaigns, with petitions. Of course, if the Good Business Charter takes off, I hope they'll be supporting that. And zero-hour justice, if you know someone who's on an oppressive zero-hour contract who's unhappy, let us know about it. We'll try and help.
Well, that's great, Julian. Thanks very much for your time, and we look forward to getting updates on what you're doing.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And hearing more about it, and obviously getting success on these campaigns.
No,
Thanks
you're
very
very
much.
welcome. Nice to speak to you again.
Okay,
Cheers.
Bye. Thanks, Julian. That's great. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to getting further updates, and above all, seeing change in the way we do business. That's business that treats people with respect, gives great customer service, and pays its taxes. Now, you can find out more about the Good Business Charter at goodbusinesscharter.com. You can find out more about Zero Hours Justice at zerohoursjustice.org, and about TaxWatch at taxwatchuk.org. Or indeed, if you want Richer Sounds, that's richersounds.com. These links will be on our website. So let us know what you think. Do email us at info@realagendaradio.org or contact us via our website, realagenda.org. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and also give us a review with your podcast provider. And don't forget, make sure you subscribe and pass the message on. That's great. And give us your feedback too, so we'd love to hear from you. So what's up next on The Real Agenda? Well, listen out for our new show, Something's Got to Change, the new politics show, which we mentioned earlier. Yes, and I said it was not just a new show about politics, but a show about new politics, a politics based on compassion and inclusivity. Now, this will be presented by Gavin Esler, the ex-BBC Newsnight presenter, who is also an accomplished author. In fact, I've read 2 of his novels, and they're great. And his great book on leadership. Highly recommended. And also Jennifer Nadel, ex-BBC and then Home Affairs editor at ITN, as well as co-founder of Compassion in Politics, and is also an author, most recently having written a book with the actress Gillian Anderson entitled We, a Manifesto for Women Everywhere. Yes, I do have a signed copy here on my bookshelf, but I have to admit I haven't read it all yet. Anyway, this promises to be a great show, and we'll bring a new consensus-seeking, non-combative approach to political interviewing. So let's see how it goes. We've got some great guests lined up. So we'll be telling you more about that very soon. Anyway, a special thanks to our sponsors, Reverse Media Group, the search and media company. In fact, the 9th fastest growing private tech company in the UK. Find out more at reversemediagroup.com. And also, while you're here, let me just tell you that we are looking for further sponsors for the show, and also offering a range of business partnerships. Very keen to partner with campaigning groups too. So do get in touch with us. So thanks for listening to Profit for Purpose. One thing is certain, people want to see change to a more compassionate and just society, as well as more courageous business leaders and politicians prepared to do the right thing. It's urgent, and it's up to us to make it happen. That's The Real Agenda. I'm Tom Burgess. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.